Unfortunately, most of them might not be reopening. Since the beginning of the pandemic up until now, thousands of small businesses have shut their doors, and a large number of them are never going to reopen. And that's not a good thing. That's some terrible news for our country. That's terrible news for our economy. That's terrible news for the people themselves. And the terrible news is especially for the people. And in particular, for my generation, the millennial generation, when you're looking at the millennial generation and the hope that is left there for this generation and for them to earn wealth, not money, not just enough resources to survive, not just enough resources to have fun, but actually earn wealth. Wealth that they can actually pass down to the next generation and then to the other generation, etc., etc. A lot of those opportunities are not going to be there for this millennial generation. And if the opportunities are not there to gain wealth, very likely what is going to happen is you're just going to create an entire generation of purely workers, people who would have to work for the entirety of their lives without being able to ever acquire enough wealth to elevate their status from where it is at. Thousands of businesses shut doors as owners plead with banks to be lenient. Well over a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, thousands of businesses facing hardship have been forced to permanently close their doors. While some owners have had their commercial properties and private homes repossessed by banks, others are living in fear of suffering the same fate if they are unable to pay their monthly installments. Frustrated business owners from Trinidad to Tobago complain that some banks are not being flexible enough with them during this time of crisis and are pleading for help. Many others said they have been encountering problems accessing funding from the 300 million loan facility made available by the government for struggling businesses during this pandemic. Business owners have been forced to look at alternatives to commercial banks like credit unions and National Entrepreneurship Development Company Limited, NEDCO, as they make last-ditch attempts to save their livelihood. According to a survey done by the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, which includes 15 business groups, among them the Supermarket Association, Petroleum Dealers, the Yachting Services Association, and establishments from the East all the way to Siparia in the deep south, some 5,000 businesses have closed in TNT over the last 12 months since the pandemic hit in 2020. The coordinator of the Confederation, Jai Leeladhar Singh, said the information came from a survey of the associations done in February. Leeladhar Singh said that many business owners are struggling and are in danger of having their properties repossessed. As we progress through this article, what you'd notice is that the vast majority of the complaints that are coming are aimed at the banks. Because a lot of businesses, the majority of businesses, are quite tied up in banks. So the moment that a business falters in their earnings, falters in their income, the bank would be at the door waiting to repossess, waiting to take. And what is happening now is that during this pandemic and during the lockdowns in specific, again, I'd like to remind this, every time I say this, I like to point out that the pandemic in and of itself is not exactly what is causing these negative effects on the economy and on the small businesses. The lockdowns are causing the negative effects. Granted, it's the pandemic that is causing the lockdowns. It's still important to bear in mind that it is the lockdown, the measures that are being chosen to be enforced, that is causing most of these hardships to the business community. CEO of the TNT Chamber of Commerce, Gabriel Faria, meanwhile, said that a poll being done with non-essential businesses in the retail sector, bars and restaurants, shows that so far 10% of businesses in that sector have closed their doors permanently. Permanent closure of doors means that even after the lockdowns are lifted, even if we find our way outside of this pandemic, even if we are sailing high after the pandemic, these businesses are are not going to catch themselves back. They have already expired. There isn't much that can be done to bring them back. You could hope possibly that the owners, they may have a new business idea, that they may be able to find new financing to create a new opportunity to start a new venture, but the old one, 10% of them, according to the information that the T&T Chamber of Commerce is receiving, 10% of them are permanently closed. He said the chamber was having discussions with the banking sector and the banks are making an attempt to work with customers to meet their needs. In the sister isle, chairman of the Tobago division of the chamber, Diane Haddad, said 250 businesses have closed in Tobago since the pandemic hit. She said there has been an increase in banks repossessing business properties in Tobago. She called on banks to give businesses a break and the opportunity to renegotiate what they owed banks before the pandemic. Bank foreclosures during this time should be a no-no. Let us say in March 2020, the business owner's debt was $1 million. Let us stop there and let's start a conversation about how we will begin to repay in 2022. So there should be a moratorium, but not with accrued interest, Haddad said. That makes sense. If these businesses are not making any money, if the business is closed, and even if they aren't closed, even if they are open, many businesses that may remain open are still only collecting a fraction of the amount of money or the amount of resources they were collecting before. So how can they be expected to still service a loan or a mortgage at the same rate and then pay the interest that is continuously mounting while they aren't making any money? That is cruelty. That is true cruelty. And to me, it's symptomatic of one of the problems in our society, in the Western society as a whole. The banks are part of the problem. The banks are at the head of a financial system that is created in a way to ensure that particularly the working class people are kept in a kind of bondage. I could understand some of the socialist point. I am not a socialist. I disagree with socialism, but I understand their critique. Their critique is that a lot of the things in this world, a lot of how this capitalist system is created, the free market system as we call it, it's not actually free. It's not actually free at all. Because if these banks fail as they did in the US, the governments usually bail them out. So that's not free. When these small businesses fail, a lot of them aren't going to be bailed out by the government. So it's not really free market, and it's not just the simple capitalist system. So throw that out immediately. But in the nature of how the system runs currently, the criticism that the socialists have is correct. Many employees out there in the job market are in a position where they will never earn more than just enough to make it by. And that is designed so on purpose by some businesses. The system is created in such a way to ensure that you are always at the trough. So you're paying the banks continuously for your car, you don't own that. You're paying the banks continuously for your house, you don't own that. You're paying the banks continuously for your day-to-day purchases because you buy everything on credit. And that's just about the way they want it. Barkeepers and Operators Association. Public Relations Officer of the Barkeepers and Operations Association of T&T, Anil Maharaj, said 50 bars have closed permanently in T&T over the last 6 months because of restrictions on their operations. He said some bar owners are owing the bank for their properties and they are facing the likelihood of repossession because of their inability to pay their mortgages. He urged bar owners to work with their banks for solutions to their problems. Again, with the banks. And bars are another one of these businesses that would have among their employees, the majority of the employees that are affected by bars being closed are people within the working class. Even many of the owners of bars aren't necessarily multi-millionaires. Bars oftentimes just make a livable earning for their owners and for the staff working in it. And these bars would not have enough carryover resources to allow them to keep paying their staff for over a year and still paying for rental and still upkeeping the property. It's just not possible for most bars. And now we're seeing that at least 50 of them are closed permanently. And the workers in these 50 bars, let's say at minimum there were 4 workers per bar. 4 times 50, that's 200 workers now on the breadline, not knowing where they're going to. Well, at the moment they didn't have any work anyway. So they've been out of work for at least a year. And now looking forward, the work that they had from before is no longer there waiting on them. If you watched my video where I spoke about the French data company, the French data firm that was speaking in glowing terms about the future of the world's economy and how we are surely going to bounce back to pre-pandemic levels. In fact, they said we have already bounced back to pre-pandemic levels. Well, this is saying that what they're saying is not true. San Fernando Area Chamber Business Association. President of the Greater San Fernando Area Chamber of Commerce, Kiran Singh, estimated that over 100 businesses have closed in the area. He said there are reports that banks could be repossessing commercial properties soon as businesses cannot afford to pay their mortgages. Singh said banks need to work with smaller businesses just like they do with the larger conglomerates. He also suggested that they lower their interest rates. Now, you see, here's part of that wickedness on the bank's part. Because if the bank can repossess from the smaller businesses, bear in mind, as the data firm said over in France, the global economy is bouncing back. There are resources in the system to purchase these properties. It's just that the resources are not located in the hands of the small businessman. So what is actually happening by the banks repossessing some of these properties? The only reason the banks will be repossessing it is because they know that they potentially can still get a sale for it. So these larger businesses may still be able to purchase these properties from the bank. And what is happening now is we're seeing a very large redistribution of wealth, not only in our country, but in the entire world. President of the San Fernando Business Association, Daphne Bartlett, has estimated that 30% of the smaller businesses, while almost 20% of the medium-sized businesses in San Fernando area and environs have closed permanently over the last 12 months. Based on personal observation, Bartlett said she has seen for sale signs increasingly being put up by business owners. Many small businesses have closed their doors because there is no income, and expenses like rent, phone and electricity are accruing. These businesses would hardly be open in the future. Businesses are finding it difficult to finance their loans and credit facilities. The banks are hounding them down for even small amounts. These banks make huge profits annually. She recommended that banks offer a moratorium on small business loans until the economy improves. Her figure, though, of 30% of the businesses closed seems closer to accurate, at least by the global standards. Because when we look over in the US, they're saying 9 million US small businesses fear they won't survive the pandemic. 3 out of every 10 small businesses in the US, and 3 out of 10 is that 30% close to that 30% number that the local businesswoman said that she observed also. 3 out of every 10 small businesses in the US say they likely won't survive 2021 without additional government assistance during the coronavirus pandemic. A survey from the Federal Reserve Bank shows. Considering there are roughly 30 million small businesses in the US, that means 9 million small firms are at risk of closing for good this year. Small businesses hold a very key part in an economy. For the small man, for the working class man, if you're interested in becoming an entrepreneur, if you want to start a business overnight, tomorrow you're interested, you always had this idea, this pet idea you have, and you did a feasibility study in your mind, and you're pretty sure that this is a good business idea and it can work. Very likely you, as a working person, if you are a working person, the business that you're going to start would be a small business. The majority of businesses are actually small businesses. Many times when you think about businesses, you could only think about the large businesses and the multimillionaires. There are some small businesses where this is a businessman. He runs his own business. He's an entrepreneur. He employs himself and he may have some other employees. But this man is not a multimillionaire. And he doesn't have the privilege of being able to support his staff and his business without an income for over a year. And if this person, he or she, because the truth is, a very, very, very large number of small businesses are owned by women. In fact, I think the majority of new small businesses that are being opened, at least I'm speaking about statistics from before the pandemic here, the majority of new small businesses being opened, I believe, are by women. And these common folk, men and women, businesses, entrepreneurship, small businesses have especially for the last 100 years, been one of the most key ways for people to actually earn wealth. You see, what a small business offers the owner is the opportunity to make more resources, to make more money, to earn more wealth based on the amount of work you output. If you're working for someone, the amount of work you output is limited in the amount of benefit it can accrue to you. That is limited by how much this person would give you for your work. And those in a lot of the larger businesses do not mind if many of the smaller businesses close and herd all of these workers into these large businesses where you're going to receive that salary that they determine, and how much ever additional work you output isn't going to really earn anything more for you. So the avenue that the small businesses open to many of the regular people to earn wealth and move up their social class may be actually closed now, unfortunately. Our local government is promising that they're going to invest into these small businesses and that we're going to see many opportunities open for these small businesses as the economy reopens and we move outside of the lockdown. And I hope that some of these measures would be able to save the existing small businesses, but I don't think that there may be any measures that would be able to be executed to revive those that have already died. What do you think? Is there hope to revive some of these already dead businesses? Is there hope to stem the tide of already closing businesses that seem to be closing faster and faster as the lockdowns continue? What is your hope for the small businesses? Because the hope for the small businesses very often is where the hope for the wealth of the common man is wrapped up. If you like this video, don't forget to click that like button and share it to those who may like this style of content. And I'll see you tomorrow for the next video.
And you feel the music rising with the time.